Welcome in, Mountaineer Nation. This is a very special episode of the Mountaineer Effect. We have a very special guest in with us tonight. Only one person I can think of. I'd rather talk to you about this whole guaranteed rate bowl debacle than Mr. Brad Smith himself, the voice of Motown. Welcome in, Brad.
Hey guys, thank you. I appreciate it, and it's a pleasure to be on the show tonight.
Guys, if you're watching and you haven't, go ahead and if you're watching on YouTube, hit that subscribe button. That way you know when we're going live. If you're watching on Facebook, be sure to share and give us a thumbs up. As always, leave your questions in the comments. If you have questions for Mr. Smith, be respectful. I'm going to say that right now. Anyway, thanks for coming on. We'll just dive right into this because last night's bowl game was a terrible debacle. Give me your thoughts on the game last night. When did you know things were going to get out of hand?
I had a bad feeling before the game even started, to be honest. It was a bad matchup for West Virginia. I knew Jarrett Deggy was going to be Jarrett Deggy. And to me, I thought it was one of the worst. On my social media last night, I was saying, I think this is probably one of the most difficult bowl games to watch in my lifetime, at least. I don't remember ever watching a game and just being so defeated watching it.
Yeah, I agree with you completely. I was very optimistic going into the game. As a fan, you try to maintain some optimism, but I knew it was going to be a really hard matchup. Not that Minnesota's a powerhouse, but it's just they're kind of the bane of West Virginia when you really look at their team. For me, the opening kickoff when West Virginia tried to run some crazy handoff end around crap off the kickoff, I knew then we were in trouble because that's desperation.
Yeah, it looked bad. It looked bad from the opening kickoff, and I think in a bowl game, generally you expect a team to try some new things, to mix it up a little bit, to try to get some other players involved, and it really just turned out to be the most boring, predictable game of the season for West Virginia, and I think that was what was most disappointing for me.
Yeah, I mean, it seems to me. We could break down individual performances and all of that. Jared Dagey was underwhelming. The offensive line was underwhelming. The defense did enough to keep us in the game, and that's all you can ask for them. They had one interception, one fumble. So the defense did their job. When I look at this game, the deficiency that I see the most is in the coaching. They did not look prepared to play Minnesota.
No, they didn't. And for me, Neil Brown, I don't feel like he's been challenged or been held accountable since he's been the coach at West Virginia. I don't think that Shane Lyons or the media, especially the media and the fans, have not questioned anything that he's done since he's been there in 3 years. And I think it's time to question everything he does.
I agree. I've been high on the Neil train, trying to stay positive as a fan because, as a fan, that is part of our responsibilities. But at the same time, like you said, part of being a fan is also, pointing out the issues that we see. And Neil Brown, to me, doesn't look like he's growing as a coach. Would you agree with that?
We haven't improved in any way on the field in 3 years. And I've said that on social media recently, and people were saying, yeah, we have grown. Our wide receivers are a little bit better. Well, yeah, they're a little bit better than they were last year because they couldn't catch a pass last year and the year before. They're a little bit better. But in every other way, I feel like we've either stayed the same or gotten worse. And I guess that's the worst part of this whole Neil Brown situation is that we just haven't shown any improvements.
Yeah, and for me, I think for me the most disappointing part that I'm seeing is, for me, the offensive line. There's a lot of talent on that line, and it seems like it's not getting pulled out of them. They look so. I mean, when you have 6 blockers on 3 rushers and they look completely lost on who to block, there's only one person you can blame for that.
Yeah, and like you said, we have too much talent on the offensive line. We have Zach Frazier, we have Wyatt Milam, we have Doug Nestor. These are guys that are really good offensive linemen. And the fact that Matt Moore is still the coach, the offensive line coach at West Virginia, it's baffling. I think it's baffling to everyone. And the fact that nobody in the media has asked Neil Brown why is Matt Moore still the offensive line coach is even more baffling to me. He in his 3 years, our offensive line has never been good in the 3 years that he's been here at West Virginia. And how does he have a job? And I think the only reason that he has a job is because he's friends with Neil Brown, and Neil Brown doesn't want to fire him. Neil Brown doesn't fire people.
And I agree with that totally. I think there comes a point where, coaches have to have guys around them as a buffer as well. And I've said this in the past on the past podcasts. Any good head coach has guys around him that can act as a buffer. That way, if you have to point your finger at somebody, you can point your finger at them and say, okay, it's time for you to go. And, Neil Brown hasn't done that. Now, call that a flaw, call it an attribute, whatever. But at the end of the day, he's getting all the blame, as he should as the head coach, because he's not taking the steps to right the problem, as we all see.
Yeah, look, he's very loyal. Obviously, he's loyal to his players, to Jarrett Deggy. He's been over the top loyal to Jarrett Deggy. He's been extremely loyal to his coaching staff. But at some point, that loyalty becomes a problem, and it has already become a problem. Matt Moore should definitely not be the offensive line coach at this point. Gerard Parker should not be the wide receivers coach. Parker should definitely not be the co-offensive coordinator either. He has no experience as an offensive coordinator before this stint at West Virginia, and it just doesn't make any sense. Again, I feel like Neil Brown has a bunch of his friends on staff that he just is afraid to fire. I don't know, afraid or just he doesn't want to do it. I don't know, but obviously some changes need to be made.
I mean, do you think, and I completely 100% agree with that. I think that, if there's not any changes in this off season, we're going to have to look higher up than Neil Brown as far as being part of the problem, because, the athletic directors and things like that, they need to make sure that they're holding their head coach accountable. And if us as fans are seeing these problems, they are. And if they're not addressing them, then, somebody has to be held accountable.
Yeah, and Shane Lyons was asked about, that contract extension and raise that he gave Neil Brown at the end of last year. And he just basically said, I was concerned that other schools were going to come and pick him off and take him. But honestly, Neil Brown was 10-10 at the time. He was, he wasn't having great success at West Virginia. And so for Shane Lyons to be concerned about other schools coming in and stealing Neil Brown, it was kind of ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean, and I remember my mentality when that all happened. I was still high on trusting the climb, and I hate saying that because I hate hearing it. I mean, I was high on that back last year. I've been high on Neil Brown. I see the potential, but I also see the problems. And, my significant other, she was telling me, she was like, she's like, I'm willing to trust the climb, but she said, I didn't realize it was Mount Everest.
Yeah. And that's what it is.
That's what it's turned into. It's turned into this insurmountable climb that we've really not made any progress in at all. I mean, I never in my life would have thought that Dana Holgerson could just come on back and that'd be okay. But after watching his performance today and West Virginia's performance, I just don't know what to think about the whole coaching situation anymore.
Yeah, I hate as a West Virginian to say I miss Dana Holgerson. I think we all do. It was exciting. Not only are we losing, we're boring. We're not any fun to watch. And so um, I don't know. It's difficult to be a West Virginia football fan right now.
Well, it is, and like you said, we're boring, and that's the thing. I don't see that changing. I think that's the pace that Neil works at, is a boring pace, and I just don't see that part of it changing at all. So we either have to get used to that, or we're going to have to move away from it. And Neil Brown's positioned himself with this extension to what, and with the recruiting class that's coming in, where okay, next year is for me was been the definitive year, but I really kind of reflected on that today, and it's like, it's really not. Um, because you bring in this recruiting class, and if they show any kind of improvement, or that they can be a good team, and then you take Neil Brown out, half of them will just portal out, and then we're back to square one. So
Yeah. Yeah, I think
it's
the
such a
problem
such a so it's a slippery slope. Sorry, go ahead.
it is, and I think the problem is that Neil Brown has shown that he doesn't like to play young players. One our best recruit last year was Caden Prather, the wide receiver, and he barely played this year. And when he did play, he played really well. And so, we're talking about that great recruiting class next year. Well, how many of them are actually going to play? I don't think very many of them will. So, how many years are we going to have to wait until we see that great recruiting class actually produce on the field?
I mean, and that's a great point, because we've all put a lot of fans have put a lot of hope in Nico coming in, but you're 2 years out from even seeing him possibly, if you go by the way Neil Brown does things. I mean, I don't know if that kid's going to wait around to get on the field for a year just sitting on the bench. I just don't know if that's his mentality.
Yeah, I actually saw Nico Marchio post, some stuff last night on his Twitter account, and he was watching the game. And the whole time, I'm just wondering, like, what's he thinking? Is this really what he wants? This offense? Is this this offensive line? Is this what he wants to play behind? And I just kind of thought, because Nico Marchio is, I don't know if you guys have seen him play this year, but he's a real winner. He wants to win. He wants to play now. He's the type of kid that wants to play as a freshman, and I just can't imagine him sitting behind, Jarrett Deggy next year and watching him lose. I don't think he will.
Well, and I agree with you 100%. I think the kid is a winner. The kid's a leader. He's got some very good traits that will do some school a great benefit. West Virginia landing him's only part of the deal. You've got to make sure you can keep him up there. And you know, I see the benefit in Jared Dagey coming back and maybe starting the season out if Nico can make enough progress. But then you're also, just kind of brushing Green and Crowder to the side and just saying, well, we're going to put all of our stock there. I mean, I'm not sold on Green, but I still want to see Crowder. I still want to see what that kid's capable of, because I think he may be better than we think.
Yeah, I'm hopeful that that's the last we've seen of Jarrett Deggy last night. His pocket presence is so bad. He doesn't have any mobility. He doesn't even really throw the ball downfield well. To me, he's just not a Power Five quarterback. He's 18-25 as the starter during his career. If he's not going to get it done, over these last 5 years, I just don't see him getting it done next year. I hope he's not back next year. I hope he decides to leave. I would love to see Crowder play. I wish Crowder would have played a little bit last night, or at least sometimes throughout the year, so we could see what he does. I also think, I know a lot of people are down on Garrett Green, but I don't feel like he's been given a real chance to be a quarterback this year. I think when he comes in, most of the play calls are running plays, and they're designed runs. Neil Brown said that he even has a different playbook for Garrett Green than he does for Jarrett Deggy, and we haven't really seen if he can throw downfield. I personally think he can throw better downfield than Jarrett Deggy. I don't know how he could do much worse.
Well, and I agree. I was really critical of Will Greer too, because Will Greer had some deficiencies in his abilities to throw to the boundaries, and when they were touting him as a Heisman hopeful, I was like, there's just no way. I mean, he cannot throw to the boundary. Like, he can't do it. Like, there's no way. And Jared Dagey has the same issues. I mean, he can't get vertical down the field. He just, in his pocket presence, like you said, he has no pocket presence. He just, I don't know. He steps up when he should step back. He steps back when he should step up. It's like every thing that he does, every natural inclination that he has is wrong.
It is. And, the offensive line was bad last night. Having said that, he really, anytime there's any pressure, like you said, he steps up, he puts his head down, he takes a sack. He doesn't try to escape pressure. And even if he does try to escape pressure, he doesn't have the mobility to do so.
Well, I'm hoping that Jarrett Dagey will go ahead and just move on with his career wherever it takes him. I think, if as loyal as Neil Brown has been to him, he kind of needs to look at his time at West Virginia, and he needs to reciprocate that loyalty by moving on and letting this quarterback battle that we're going to have happen.
Yeah,
without any undue influence.
100%. I just think if I'm Jarrett Dagey, I guess I would probably come back if I were him, because what other options does he have? He's not going to go to the NFL. I guess he could transfer, but I don't know how many other teams are really clamoring for a Jarrett Dagey. So I don't know. I don't know what he would do. So I guess I would come back if I was him. I hope he doesn't.
Well, it kind of brings back to mind, the Clint Trickett, Pat White days where Pat was just waiting in the wings until Clint Trickett got hurt, and then in he came and he never went out, and that doesn't happen very often, and that's not what I would like to see happen to Jared Dagey. But if it gets us the means that we're looking for as a fan base, I'll take it.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind seeing him break an ankle or something. I don't know. As long as that,
And I mean, that's the thing. Like, I'm one of these folks that thinks that's really hard to put blame on a kid or to point the finger at an individual kid. But I've done a lot of thinking today about this, and what the fan base has to realize is, with these kids earning NIL money now, that undue finger pointing is coming at a price. So Spencer Rattler's the perfect example to kind of throw out there. Is, he got millions of dollars in NIL money and crapped the bed, and got replaced by Caleb Williams in Oklahoma. So those finger pointings are a little more justified now, because these kids are on scholarship and they're making lots of money off of their image and likenesses, or some of them are. So that's where I'm a little more open to the criticism now of individual athletes, just because they have the potential to monetize their name and their face.
Yeah, and they're, we call them kids, but they want to be treated like adults in some ways, like you're saying, and then in other ways they want to be treated like they're kids still. And I mean, you can't have it both ways. And I think also in the state of West Virginia, I grew up in West Virginia. I graduated from WVU. West Virginia sports, West Virginia football and basketball is a huge part of my life. And it means something to the people in West Virginia. And so the passion that we have for these teams, it goes both ways as well. Sometimes it's ugly when things aren't going well. Sometimes it gets ugly. It matters to us. We care. And so,
Well, at the end of the day, all Mountaineer fans, the fanatical fans, the pragmatic fans, we all stand in the same place. We all want to see the program succeed. We want to get to a bigger national name, bigger national level. We want to compete with the best of the best. That's what we all want. And I think the more fanatical West Virginia fans have to realize that, if the ship's sinking and there's a hole in the boat, somebody's got to point out the hole in the boat. And I think that's what you do with the Voice of Motown is you kind of point the fingers at the holes in the boat. And I do appreciate that because, you know, I put my fan blinders on sometimes too. I told you before this podcast that, you know, I'm bad for trying to pander and not pander at the same time, and that's a hard, slippery slope. At the end of the day, we all want the same thing.
Absolutely. We care. We show, I guess we show in different ways how much we care. But like you said, I think people appreciate honesty. I know some people, I was reading your comments on your page earlier that say I'm the most hated person in West Virginia. I hope that's not true, but if it is, so be it. I want to use my platform to be as honest as I can and to help our program as much as I can. And I think people appreciate that. And I think that's why I've had so much success at the Voice of Motown.
Oh, and I agree. I think, you know, anybody that reads, you know, what you put out there and anything, they have to, you know, a lot of times people get offended because the truth kind of hurts. And I think sometimes when you're not looking at the truth and it smacks you in the face, your first reaction is to try to hit back. And I think you may be on the reciprocal end of that.
Yeah, and honestly, if I grew up reading West Virginia newspapers. I grew up listening to media personalities in West Virginia, and there's just no real honesty, to be honest, in West Virginia media. They paint a very rosy picture when it's not always a rosy situation, and so people don't like especially West Virginians don't like that kind of honesty sometimes.
No, and that's the truth. You know, I grew up. You know, I'm in the southern part of West Virginia in Mercer County, right on the border of Virginia. I'm actually closer to Virginia Tech than I am Morgantown. But I
Hmm.
grew up with a lot of fair weather West Virginia fans, so I've seen all sides of it. From, you know, guys that are today they're wearing Virginia Tech gear, cheering for Virginia Tech, and then Virginia Tech gets beat, and then all of a sudden West Virginia is the next hot thing, and so they're on the West Virginia train. So I have grown up really despising Virginia Tech on many, many levels. So, like, but I understand that because there are a lot of folks that they're not interested unless West Virginia is doing well. And, you know, we picked for us here at the Mountaineer Effect, we picked a banner season really to go all in on the Mountaineer Effect because, man, if you can find any kind of positive things to say about this team that we watched this year, you've done something well. Um,
Oh yeah,
'Cause
absolutely. Yeah.
I've, you said like you know, this bowl game. I agree with that at the very beginning. You said that you haven't watched any bowl games that was as hard to watch as this one. I completely agree with that. I mean, I don't know how many times I actually sat on the couch watching the game while also watching Django Unchained on my phone just because I
Great
wanted to be
movie.
entertained.
Great
Yeah,
movie,
I
man.
had to be entertained somehow, and I knew the game was not going to provide that sort of entertainment.
Yeah, I wish I was watching Django Unchained 2 last night. That was a great idea. I was thinking last night as well while I was watching the game that, you know, I couldn't think of very many exciting plays that West Virginia had offensively this year, and I thought that was a real shame. There was a couple of plays. Letty Brown's big run against Virginia Tech early on. Bryce Ford Wheaton had a great catch in the back of the end zone. There was only two or three plays that I could really think of the whole season that really were exciting, that were big plays, and again, that's very frustrating.
Well, and it's funny that you say that because I also thought about that very. If I could sum up West Virginia's season in one play, which play would it be? And the play that for to me the most important play West Virginia had all season was at the end of the Texas game on fourth down where they decided to go for it and threw it into the end zone. They threw a dart. The receiver didn't catch it. They could have kicked the field goal, but they went for that dagger moment. And I've been hung on that because it shows me that somebody has whoever called that play. That's the only play that I give two craps about who actually called it. Because whoever called that play needs to be calling the plays. Because that play showed me that somebody has a killer instinct. I have a feeling that that was probably, I don't know, they probably let some fan pick it or something. I don't know.
Well,
But like,
I think at that time, Kurt Soroka, the offensive analyst who went on to be the offensive coordinator at Minnesota, he was really really plugged in on the play calling there for a couple of games when things got really bad, and you could tell a major difference in the play calling when he was involved. And then you could tell last night how he wasn't involved. It was classic Neil Brown last night.
oh, it was very bland. I mean, the game was. Uh, it's so frustrating to watch a bland game like that because you know when the runs are coming, you know when the passes are coming. Yeah, West Virginia runs screens out the screen hole.
Yeah.
I don't even want to talk about screens. I get so sick. You know, when you're not that fast on the perimeter, you know, throwing those screens just don't benefit. And then I also have to say, Tony Mathis was wildly underutilized last night. I was hoping that cat would get 25 carries. I can't understand that either. Like,
Yeah, he looked
I
great.
don't.
He looked fantastic. I loved the effort that he played with last night. But we have a lot of players, really talented offensive players that just didn't see the ball last night. Winston Wright, who he posted a pretty cryptic message on Twitter about an hour ago. It said, "It's been a pleasure. Love y'all boys." And didn't say anything else after that. So I don't know if he's considering transferring or not, but he got three catches for 16 yards. That's got to be frustrating for someone with that level of talent to not get the ball a little bit more.
Yeah, you know, it seems like the past 4 or 5 years, going back into Will Greer's last year, it seems like the receivers. It started then is when I noticed it. You know, got cases of the dropsies. I've never seen wide receivers do that and the way they have at West Virginia, where I mean, it'll hit them right in the hands or right in the chest, and they'll just completely drop it. And
Yeah,
I kind of blame the quarterback play on that because when you have a quarterback, and this is what I think of Daggy, this is what I thought of Will Greer too, was they either put too much mustard on the ball or not enough, and the receivers have no idea which one it's going to be, because that does matter when you're catching the ball.
hmm
If it's coming hard and you try to catch it soft, you're probably going to drop it. And if you're think it's going to be a finesse pass and it's got a ton of speed on it, it's a lot harder to catch. Like there's just so many things that I mean, we could go on all day about the issues that they have. Tim, do we have any questions from the peanut gallery?
Um. Yeah, only a while back, Sean came in and says, "Do y'all think Dante is coming back because from his pregame bowl conference he wasn't coming? Well, he wasn't turned away from the idea of coming back."
I think he should. I think if anything, he should have learned, you know, from Darius, you know, how hard it is to make it in the NFL, and that the more tape you put out in college, the better it can only benefit him more.
Yeah. Brad, do we still have you on, my man? I think we lost Brad, dude.
Uh
Oh, I lost you too.
what are you doing, Tim?
I don't know. One of those things, man.
It's all right. We'll work through it. We can get him back up.
Now you're up there. Yeah, we lost him. Yeah, that's what we did. I got you over here though.
Put me back where I belong. See if you can get Brad.
You go ahead and talk. I will as you talk. Sorry, guys, whoever's watching this.
It's all right. I'm gonna read to you and just look at some of the comments.
I'm gonna delete you, Sam, and I'll make you come right back. Lordy people, this is what happens.
Yeah, I
when you
mean,
go live.
I really think, all things said, I mean, I was really hoping that the bowl game would be a crowning achievement on the end of the year, and it just wasn't. Like I had a lot of optimism about how that game would go, and it was such a bad game to watch. It was almost as bad. I mean, it was as hard to watch. I watched Virginia Tech play today, and Maryland just completely destroyed Virginia Tech.
Really?
And like 54-7 or 54-10.
Yeah.
They just kicked the crap out of Virginia Tech, and I don't know. It's like these mid-level teams are. I don't know what the deal is, honestly. And West Virginia definitely has some issues.
Well, it's pretty bad when you rather watch the lingerie football league than than you would college games.
Well, I do hate putting all the blame on Neil Brown. I do. But I mean, he is the coach. He's the one that sells the ship. He's the one that's in charge. And if you don't look at what he's doing and the guys that are on his staff and have a problem that all the guys that are on his staff are his buddies that came in with him from Troy, and he's not getting rid of any of them when they're obviously underperforming, that's a problem.
Yeah.
Like that's a huge problem. Um,
And
you know,
and
they're-
Dagy's coming back, right?
I mean, I anticipate him coming back. I could see him being a good fill in to get one of these younger guys in, a buffer, so to speak. But at the same time, man, just move on and let it happen. Just let it happen.
Yeah, let me see. Let me see if I can get him back on.
If you want to, yeah. Because I mean, we open up at Pitt next year, man. Like Pitt's going to be down next year, but we won't beat Pitt
No.
playing the way we played against Minnesota. And then you're talking about, Pitt, Virginia Tech, and then all the conference games. Like, that's not going to be a pretty schedule. I mean, we're going to be a 4 or 5 win team next year.
Yeah, I'm gonna. You know what? But with Nico coming in, I'm afraid after him watching West Virginia this season and watching them in the bowl game, I'm afraid that he might change his mind. I don't want him to, because I think West Virginia needs he's like a rabid dog out there. He really is. Like you said, he embodies what West Virginia football is really all about. And I know I don't want people or to fanboys to deem him as the new savior of Morgantown. He don't need that kind of pressure. He just needs to come in, develop the way he needs to develop. And I think I think he will start. And as far as Garrett Green, I agree with Brad. We haven't seen nothing other than called run plays called for him. That's it. That's all he's done. I don't think he's even threw the ball once this season, has he?
And I mean, not really. He had one pass. He had a couple passes in one game. I can't remember which one it was. One when he got down the field and it was a really nice completion. Let's see. Let me look here. Brett Jones, I think we need to talk about coaching, play calls, and O-line. Yeah, we've talked about all those. I mean, that's kind of
O-line
that's the thing. That's the thing, guys. That's where we are. Like when we talk about play calls, O-line, and coaching, we're talking about Neil Brown. I mean, that's where we are. Because if he isn't going to fire some of these coaches that he's hired in,
freaking A. Did I just screwed this up? I did. I just screwed this up, guys. Discord is not my friend.
any quarterback behind that line is going to get destroyed. Absolutely.
I'm trying to add him back to this, but I don't know how without giving you or sending him your number or whatever, and then you guys talking through your phone. I don't know.
It's all right. See if you can get it worked out live. If not, it's okay.
Oh, that's our first drop call.
It does, John. I mean, it feels like West Virginia is in over their head. It feels like Neil Brown is in over his head a little bit. West Virginia was the perfect job for Neil Brown because the expectations were a little less than they are at some of the bigger schools, even though from the fan base it's not. But on a national level, the expectations are a little less. But it just seems like he just hasn't progressed at all. I haven't seen anything that makes me go like, hey, he's a genius. Like Lincoln Riley, he is an offensive genius. That's clear. I mean, he is. Like you can watch the pedigree of what he does and how he coaches, and you can tell that he is. I don't get that from Neil Brown. Like I don't see this offensive guru. I don't see a defensive guru. I see a manager is all that I see. I don't see a coach. And it shouldn't be that way. See if we can get Brad back on here.
Get him back here.
Hey, you guys there?
Hey.
Yeah. There we go.
I just got to get back to the other thing.
Yeah, you guys were talking about Dante Still's coming back, and I've heard it's 99.9% that he will be back. I think he'd be crazy if he didn't come back, especially after, what happened with Darius last year.
Yeah, totally. I like Dante a lot. I like Darius. I thought them two guys, if they could have hung out for that NIL money, they probably could have made some money marketing themselves together. I could see the T-shirts, the Stills brothers.
Absolutely.
He just, that's the thing. That's the thing with some of these kids that have potential NFL futures. Maybe you do and maybe you don't. You look at even basketball with Miles McBride. I knew he was doing the right thing. Absolutely, and I knew it. He checks all the boxes. Derek Culver, on the other hand, he should have hung around for another year. I know he didn't want to, but he should have. He needed more development.
Yeah, the Derek Culver situation, that was pretty disappointing and depressing. He's good kid, made an awful decision.
Yeah, I mourn a little bit when I think about the basketball team that we could have. Now, granted, I love the team that we have. I do. I think we have a pedigree of ball players that are West Virginia through and through. The guys, we could have Oscar Sheboy, Derek Culver, Miles McBride, Gabe Osaboyan, McNeil. I mean, Taz Sherman. Like, there legitimately would have been a national championship team. So I'm mourning that just a little bit.
For sure, and I think seeing Oscar Sheboy do so well at Kentucky is also a little disappointing. I'm happy for him, obviously, but he's exactly what we need this year. The Oscar Sheboy that's playing this year in Kentucky is exactly what we need on our team right now. An inside defender, a rebounder. It's a shame that he didn't play like Oscar Sheboy last year.
Well, and I agree totally. That's the thing. I was so excited. The only other time I've ever gotten really excited for a player was when Oscar, Nico, of course, and then Oscar Sheboy, when he was coming in. The problem, though, and I think that's something like as West Virginia fans we have to swallow too. And I think this might be part of the problem, part of the reason that Bob Huggins hasn't ascended into the Hall of Fame as of yet. And that being there's a certain type of player that just don't fit Bob Huggins' mold. And that player is Oscar Sheboy, a kid who has all the talent in the world, but they don't have that mentality that Bob Huggins likes. Like, and I don't want to say he being coddled, but that's kind of how I equate it. Like, if you want to be coddled, don't go play for Bob Huggins. Like, if you want to be told you're doing a good job, don't go play for Bob Huggins, because that's not what you're going to get. And I think Oscar mentally just wasn't tough enough to play for Bob Huggins.
Yeah, it's weird because it seemed like, when he came in that he was, the ultimate hard worker, and that he was in the gym, and that he was playing, that he would be the type of player that Bob Huggins needed. And something happened, last year in the offseason, and I'm not really sure what it was, but he definitely was not the same Oscar Sheboy last year.
He's a weenie.
Yeah, I honestly think what happened, me personally, I think what happened was, as hard as he did work that first year, I think he may have thought that I've paid my dues. It's time to reap the benefits, and that's not how it works with Bob Huggins. Like, you're you're going to play 4 or 5 years of hardcore yes sir, no sir basketball if you play for Bob Huggins. I just don't think that was what he expected.
Yep.
Like, maybe he expected to do the hard work and then reap the rewards.
Yeah, Derek Culver was really the ultimate example of a player who wasn't necessarily a Bob Huggins player at the beginning, and kind of became a Bob Huggins player, towards the end of his career. He had a lot of, behavior, personal off the court issues his first year, and he really turned it around and really became a real force in the Big 12.
That for me, that was what hurt so bad when he went ahead and left, because I know he learned a lot from Bob Huggins, and he took a lot away from West Virginia. I felt like there was still more that he could have learned and more he could have taken away. It is what it is. I'm not sure where he's at. I would imagine he's probably playing in the European League. I would imagine.
Yeah, he's on a G League team right now, in the NBA G League. So I don't know how he's doing though.
Do you think Bob Huggins will get into the Hall of Fame this year?
Yeah, I think this is the year for sure. I don't know how they would keep him out. I was looking at the list of people that are nominated, and I mean, he has for several years now, but he definitely is one of the most. He should definitely be in this year.
I agree. I mean,
but again, we've been saying that for years. So
yeah, I mean, I think just his mentality. I think maybe some of the people that vote on that just look at, he is a hard coach to play for. Like, he is. Like I said, if you're, I would never be able to play. I'm too soft to play for Bob Huggins. It just wouldn't happen. And I know that, and I think some kids just don't quite realize that. Somebody said, I gotta love the hustle from Gabe. Let me tell you what, Gabe Osaboyan, man, that kid is West Virginia incarnate. There is no other basketball player I've seen in my life that is more West Virginia basketball than that kid.
Yeah, and I think Paulie Polycap too has really come on lately, and kind of he's kind of taken on a Gabe Osaboyan role as well. I really like him. I like what he's doing defensively and rebounding as well. I'll tell you who I am kind of disappointed in though is Isaiah Cottrell. He just doesn't seem like he's ready to play yet.
Yeah, he seems to me like he almost seems to me like Oscar did last year. Like, there's just some sort of mental barrier or just something going on that just is under the surface that just is preventing him from taking that next step to being the player that we all see can be. He just can't quite get there. I hope he finds it, because I think he's going to be dynamite if he does.
Yeah, I read that an Achilles injury like he had last year, it takes 2 or 3 years to really be back to where you were before the injury. So, it's kind of cool that he's playing and toughing it out, but he's really having a tough time this year.
Yeah, those Achilles
Well,
injuries are no joke.
Yeah.
we'll swing back to football and just kind of go this route with it. Yeah, I think in the off season things need to change. What in your eyes, what are say two things Neil Brown needs to do immediately, and and you can't say resign. Um,
Yeah,
but
two obvious things that stand out. Hire an offensive coordinator that is experienced and that has shown that he can get the job done. I think that's the obvious number one thing. And number two is to get a new offensive line coach. Matt Moore obviously shouldn't be our offensive line coach anymore.
I agree definitely with both of those things. And that those two things, and that's what's funny about it is those two things are obvious to everybody. If you watch football and you know anything about football, I don't care where your fandom lies. Those are two things that you have to agree on.
And what kills me is that nobody in the West Virginia media um, questions him about it. They don't say anything about, hey, have you thought about hiring a new offensive coordinator? It's what every West Virginian wants to know, and nobody asked it because they're afraid of, the media members at West Virginia are really afraid of losing their credentials. Credentials don't mean anything to me at all. So I'm not worried about that. They've made it very clear that I'm not going to have credentials, so I can ask these type of questions. So, but it's a shame that I can't go in and say that would be my very first question if they let me in. I'd be like, why do we not have an offensive coordinator again? Why are you calling plays, Neil Brown? That's not something that any coach in the country does. No head coach calls plays like this, and so it's just very strange that that he's doing it and that nobody questions it.
Right. That is. I mean, sorry, Sammy. That's a good point you point out there, Brad. Because I mean, not every head coach. I mean, calling plays is not his forte. His forte. He's really good at program building. So let him do that. You find the right personnel and you delegate under the vision of the head coach, and that's what you do. You just got to find the right personnel. And I don't know why, like you said, even with the media, I don't know why somebody hasn't pointed that out by now. And so with his new recruiting class coming in this season, we're just going to have to, gosh, I hope we're just going to have to see, because I hope they do give you the credentials and you can be there to ask him the tough questions.
Nah, they hate me there. They're not gonna give me credentials anytime. And honestly, to be honest, I know a lot of people are like, Brad, you don't have credentials. There's a reason why you don't have credentials. Well, yeah, there is, because I'm going to go in and be honest. I'm going to go in and ask the tough questions. And they clearly don't want tough questions to be asked to their head coaches. That's why you listen to a Neil Brown post conference, a post game interview, and they're essentially the exact same thing every game.
It's nauseating. It's nauseating.
And the media and none of the fans really question the media either and say, hey, why are these media members not asking the questions that we want? It's the media's job to ask the questions that the people want to hear. And they simply don't do that. They'll go in and say, well, Neil, what'd you think of the special teams? What'd you think of questions that nobody cares about?
Right.
The questions we want to know are, these questions that I'd like to ask.
They lob softballs, and then he gives the same answer every week in, week out. He always praises the other team and talks about how well they did, what they did good, and it's the same thing every week. And that's what I was saying, like with the two things to do, hiring an offensive coordinator, a real offensive coordinator, and hiring a new line coach, because those are two things that would show us, one, Neil Brown is willing to take on personnel issues. And two, he's willing to fire his buddies for the betterment of the program. And those are two of the biggest things that I think he could show all of us as fans, that he's willing to grow to improve this program. Now, if he tries to go into next year and nothing changes, I mean, every Mountaineer fan should be pissed off about that, honestly.
Yeah, and it's I can't imagine that he's going to start the season with no offensive coordinator and with Matt Moore as his offensive line coach. But like you said, if if that happens, we really, really have to wonder what's Neil Brown thinking? What is he seeing that we're not seeing?
Well, what's the administration thinking? I mean, you
Yeah.
know, I have to know something about what's going on, and that's the thing. I've coached a little football, and I just me and Tim coached middle school and some high school football, and this is middle school shit, guys. Like this is stuff that, as a middle school coach, you can look at your team and the guys that are helping you run the team, and you can pinpoint where the issues are. Like this is nothing that should even be to this point on a college level. That's kind of what got me started with the whole Neil Brown thing, and kind of taking a step back, is because these are things that we dealt with in middle school that he's dealing with in college, and he's doing nothing about it.
Yeah, and I also don't understand all the secrecy. Why can't you tell us why you're calling the plays? That's interesting. That's something that we all want to know. And why does Matt Moore still have a job? Why have you stuck with Deggy? These are questions that need to be answered, and nobody asked them. And if they did ask them, they'd probably get in trouble with Mike Montoro and his bunch there at the athletic department, and probably would lose their credentials. And that's scary too, because our media is just being silenced. They're being hushed. And, that sucks.
Do you have any thoughts on that? Like, I mean, do you think the administration's, bringing homers in to ask these questions? Or, I mean, do you think it's got anything to do with boosters? I mean, that might be something you don't want to even address, and that's fine.
No, I do. I love. I'll talk about that all day. I've spent I've had a lot of conversations with the football communications director. I don't know if you guys are aware of him. His name is Mike Montoro, and I'm asking him, very politely, why do I not have credentials? I'm one of the most widely read journalists in the state at this point. I have a huge platform, and he gives these media credentials to people that, frankly, don't have even 1/10 of the audience that I have. And the only reason that and he won't say it, but the only reason that he has is that I'll ask tough questions. And the media is supposed to ask tough questions. That's the responsibility of the media. And unfortunately, in West Virginia, that's just not the case.
Well, I wonder, is this something that from your experience, did this start with Neil Brown, or was it kind of the same way with Dana?
It wasn't nearly as bad with Dana, and I don't know what the difference is, but I don't know. They've protected Neil Brown from day one, but honestly, it's the same thing with Bob Huggins. I mean, I love Bob Huggins, but listen to his interviews after games. It's the same. It's the same questions. It's the same answers. If we lose, guess what? It was team didn't shoot well. Got to throw the ball you can't throw the ball out of bounds. There's not any real deep answers. And that's concerning to me.
Do you think that has something to do with and I might piss some people off by even asking this question, but do you think that has something to do with the mentality of the West Virginia fans and the way, and you guys that's watched my podcast, where I stand on some of this. A lot of West Virginia fans, watch what other schools do and what other teams do and what ESPN says, and they just, wash, rinse, repeat what is said there. Do you think that it's partially because fans really don't know any better? And I'm not talking about the guys that are watching this podcast. I'm talking about casual fans that really don't know any better about the inner workings of college football, college basketball. Do you think it has anything to do with that?
Of course, yeah, definitely, and that's what I try to get across to people is that you're not hearing the whole story. And when I tell the whole story, and honestly, I feel like I think I'm the only journalist in West Virginia that tells the whole story. And when I do, people get mad. People don't want to hear the truth. People, they say that I'm anti-West Virginia, that I hate the Mountaineers, that I'm a Pitt fan, that I'm a Marshall fan, and that couldn't be further from the truth. I bleed gold and blue. This has been a huge part of my life, and so it's confusing and it's concerning that West Virginians don't see it, and I think it's because they're so used to this kind of journalism their whole life. They're used to listening to Bob Herzl and these guys and Mickey Ferrari and all these guys who basically they just went in and whatever the coach said, they just typed it up and put it in the newspaper, and that's not interesting. That's not the truth. And so, yeah, I think it's absolutely has a lot to do with that.
And I agree. I mean, I think, we all grew up, I grew up, watching Don Nealon and Rich Rod, and, they were always, the way they always wrote about them in the papers and presented them, they looked invincible. And, it's like that's kind of what they're still trying to do. And it just doesn't work. And, the information age that we're in, that does not work anymore.
Yeah. And, when Vic Koenig was fired last year, with the whole Kerry Martin situation, we never found out exactly what happened because they just swept it under the rug and acted like it didn't happen. And, why was Vic Koenig fired? Does anyone know?
That's a good point. I mean,
it just gets swept under the rug, and there's all this secrecy going on in West Virginia at the university, and I don't get it. It's not like that in other universities. It's not like that in other programs.
And it's something that definitely should be taken head on. And I mean, it's hard, and I'm not as familiar with all of that, as some people may be, but there is, I do know there's a disconnection between the amount of communication that goes on between the athletics programs and the general population. Like, there are a lot of things that go on. I've got family members that went to WVU and it's still at WVU, and there's a lot of things that you hear that just, if you don't hear them directly from them, you would never even know. That's kind of interesting. I mean, that's an interesting take on it. Just wondering what the issue is. How far up the ladder does it actually go? Will it ever come out? Maybe not.
Yeah, I think Shane Lyons is a good guy. I think these guys that are working underneath of him, these communication directors, I've dealt a lot with them via email and on the phone. I've spent a lot of time trying to, plead my case that, hey, I just want to go in and be honest. I want to, represent my fan base and my platform honestly, and they just shut me down. And they make up stuff. They say, Brad's dangerous or whatever. There's nothing dangerous about me. I'm a West Virginia grad. I'm a lifelong West Virginia fan. I just want what's best for the program.
That's interesting. I mean, that's interesting because that's something, to get into that conversation wasn't something that I expected, for the podcast. But I mean, I think that's something that it's good for the fans to know, is that there are a lot of things. I mean, for you casual fans that don't watch Neil Brown press conferences, go and pick any press conferences from this year and just listen to the first 3 minutes of them, and you'll see exactly what we're talking about. I mean, they literally lob that man softballs. Like, there are no real substance to the questions that are asked. It's all repetitive and
wipe his butt.
Yeah. I mean, it's not. I mean, and I've noticed it more this year because I like to watch. I used to like to watch those conferences and stuff, but I mean, there's no point in watching them now because they're all exactly the same.
They are, and nothing gets accomplished. It's the same answers every week. Nothing changes because he's not being held accountable.
So what can the fans? I think this conversation will find some good ears. What can Mountaineer fans do to help? To help try to bring. I don't want to say help you get credentials or anything like that, but what can West Virginia fans do to help bring the truth back out of get these difficult questions answered? How can we persuade the media to ask the right questions? What can be done?
Yeah, I think it's just about keeping an open mind. I think West Virginia fans have a kind of a closed mind about the Mountaineers, and that's a shame because I think there's difficult questions that need to be answered. We've addressed several of them here today, and they're not being asked, and so they just like get swept under the rug. And so what I would ask from Mountaineer fans is to just keep an open mind. You know, I personally think they should be reading the Voice of Motown. I think that's where you get honest analysis. It's not, these other journalists. They kind of say that I'm clickbait or that I'm a bad guy. But honestly, I'm the only person out there telling the truth about this stuff. They're what they do. I don't know who you guys read for your information on West Virginia sports, but you go through all of them: Chris Anderson, Mike Kazaz, all these guys. All they're doing is essentially reporting what they think West Virginia fans want to hear. That's what makes them money. And that's what and it would be so easy for me to do the same thing. I've got a big platform now. It'd be very easy for me to just paint that rosy picture like they do. I hope people are starting to see that I'm kind of fighting the hard fight here and the good fight. I don't know. We'll see.
Well, that was the whole when we created the Mountaineer effect. The reason we called it the Mountaineer effect is because I think all Mountaineers understand doing a lot with a little. You know what I mean? There are other podcasts out there that they put out videos every day, and you know they talk everything. They do videos about every little piece of chatter that's out there. But what I want to accomplish is to have good content. I don't want
Yep.
to have content just to make content. I mean, to me, that's no fun.
Right.
And
Hey,
from time to time, I go ahead.
Can I give my guys at the Voice of Motown podcast a little plug? They do a really great show, great analysis. If you guys could check them out sometime at the Voice of Motown podcast, Brandon and Tyler, I think they're one of the best West Virginia podcasts out there.
Yeah, we'll put their information in the description.
Thank you.
But yeah, I mean, and that's kind of where I want to be with it is doing good content, talking about real things, And like I said, I've caught myself in between walking that fine line between, you got to get your viewership up and get your subscribers up, and at the end of the day, I'm doing this. Me and Tim do this for fun. So, I think to have the impact we want to have, I think taking the more pragmatic approach and the more real truthful approach is the direction we're going to go moving forward, because the hard questions that need to be asked. I mean, if you've watched, like we said, if you've watched those Neil Brown press conferences, you already know what we're talking about. If you listen to the post-game radio shows, you already know what we're talking about. It's just lobbing softballs. That's all it is.
It's a snooze fest, man.
For sure. Tim, do we have any questions? I want to make sure I didn't miss any questions if we have any.
Yeah, John Kelly from the world of YouTube says, can you ask Brad what he thinks is going to take to make the West Virginia football program elite again?
Yeah, I think Neil Brown's going to have to be more flexible. I think he's going to have to be more open to changes. I feel like he's a pretty stubborn person. I think he's a pretty stubborn coach, and that's a flaw. His offense has not worked. He hasn't gotten an offensive coordinator. Jarrett Deggy has not played well. He hasn't tried anything else. These are things that you have to make adjustments, and I haven't seen Neil Brown make those in-game adjustments yet. I think some of the stuff that he's doing, I like who he is as a person. I like he's obviously a great recruiter. I don't know exactly what he's selling to these recruits. I don't know how he's getting these great recruits, but he's doing it. So I think as long as he is willing to make some changes and to make the necessary adjustments, be more flexible, I think otherwise he's doing a good job.
And I agree with that. I will say, once we get into next year and possible year 6 with Neil Brown, if we don't see the growth, if we don't see growth in this offseason, the only way this program is going to get back to an elite level, unfortunately, is probably a 2020, probably what, 2023 retool year, where, Neil Brown will probably have to go. And we're going to be back into the coaching carousel. I don't see anything about Neil Brown outside of his ability to help build a program and to recruit that says he's an elite coach. Nothing. He was touted as a offensive genius. He is not at all.
No.
Defensively, our defensive coach, that's fine. That's fine where that is. But as far as Neil Brown, if he don't improve with the players he's got coming in, which are his players, he's not an elite coach, and he just doesn't have it in him. And that's just, I think that for me, that's the way I look at that.
Yeah, and I think also, people talk about what a great culture we have, the football program, but we led the country this last year in transfers, and so everything's not as great as it seems. I don't know why we led the nation in transfers if everything's so great there.
Absolutely.
I like
more, Tim.
I like what Brent comes. He says it's not all about Daggy though. We've seen what Daggy can do when he has time to throw the ball. It's more the O line. I mean, yeah. I mean that's your football 101, of course. I mean,
yeah, but Brent, if I can just answer Brent real quick.
Yeah.
Brent, in college football, you don't have quarterbacks usually don't have a lot of time to sit back and throw the football. That's not something that the quarterbacks have the luxury of having, and so you have to be good at at handling pressure. And what we've seen from Jarret Doege is, I haven't seen a worse quarterback at handling pressure than Jarret Doege. And so, I mean, you can say the offensive line's bad, and it hasn't been great. It certainly wasn't great last night. But Doege has to be better than he was at getting rid of the ball, not taking sacks, escaping pressure.
Right.
Well, there's times where Doege gets happy feet even before, even during his drop back. I mean, quarterbacks, I do agree with Brent to an extent, like the O-line has been suspect. But a quarterback's play has to exceed the offensive line's deficiencies. And he can do that by knowing when to step up, when to step back, and to read his progressions. I think Jarret Doege's biggest issue, and I've seen it, is he does not read the field fast enough. And when you have a quarterback that is a slow reader on where the ball needs to go, even 4 seconds isn't enough. It's just not enough, because he's going to go through those progressions so slow that he really doesn't have the opportunity to get the ball off.
Yeah, I think you nailed it, man. He's slow at getting rid of the ball. He's slow running. He's a slow quarterback.
I'm reminded by a book by Urban Meyer that I read. He does these drills and stuff. I know Urban Meyer, whatever. the grinder. Anyway, so it's called. He teaches his offensive linemen this and his quarterbacks. It's the 4 to 6 second drills, and that's what you got. That's what you have to give them. You got, as a quarterback, you got 4 to 6 seconds. You really do. 6 the most, 4, and you got that time. And so, that's not what you're seeing with West Virginia's O-line right now. It's very, very they underperform all the time. There's just no time. I mean, how many times did the linebacker back there or safety come in, Sammy, the game last night was like 2 or 3 times. I think just came in right through the door was open. It was right there, and sack after sack.
I mean, they had 5 sacks last night. Probably 3 of them. two of them at least. Nagy literally snapped the ball and was on the ground. So
Yeah.
you have to look at the other three. But the other three, none of them were coverage sacks. They were Nagy stepping back when he should have stepped up, him stepping up too late, or him just going so slow through his progressions that he just don't even see it coming. Like, I mean, and it's obvious. Like, it's obvious that that's the issue. I mean, how do you correct that? I mean, he's a 5-year junior or whatever they call, whatever you call him now. I mean, you're not going to fix that with another year of play. It's just he has reached his ceiling. Period. That's it. He's not going to get any better.
Yeah, it was interesting to hear that, Neil Brown said that he was his most improved player this last year in the offseason. I didn't see any improvement.
No.
I saw regression. So it's, it's kind of crazy. It makes you wonder, like, I'm starting to question, does Neil Brown, is he a good judge of talent? I don't know.
I don't know either, because Sammy, all season long, he was asking me questions like, why is there this loyalty between Brown and Nagy? What does he see in Nagy that he just keeps going to Nagy game after game after game? And it's like, and nothing changes. There's nothing at all.
Yeah, he was pretty loyal to Austin Kendall his first year too, when Austin Kendall was struggling so badly. So, and maybe he just doesn't like to change his quarterback. Maybe he's just a loyal guy. I don't know.
Well, and that, and that might be his selling point to these recruits, pointing at his loyalty to his players and, and the circus that we have right now that is college football between the portals and the coach changes and all that. Selling loyalty is a good thing. But if the kids don't have the ability to play the position that they're there to play, that loyalty don't mean crap. He could have promised Nico the world, but if his loyalty to Jared Dagey supersedes what he promised Nico, what's the point? The loyalty to Dagey could be the very reason that Nico transfers out after next year. I mean, that's a legitimate concern.
Yeah. You there, Brad?
Yeah,
Okay,
I was listening. I would say, I'm curious what Neil Brown, how he's selling the team. Like, what is he telling these high school recruits? Because if you watch West Virginia's team, if you watch them play, there's not much to get excited about.
Could you imagine? Seriously? Like, I laughed at this last night, and I'm like, I'm a high school senior. I just signed my letter of intent to go play for that.
Yeah.
Like,
I don't know. He's obviously a magician as a recruiter, because what's on the field is not exciting. It's not something that I certainly wouldn't want to be a part of if I was a talented high school senior.
No, for sure. I mean, considering, especially with a couple of the players, some of the places that they could have gone and played. I mean, maybe I've said it before, maybe this is the dawning of a new era where kids like a challenge and they want to go somewhere different and they want to go somewhere where they can be bigger than, the name of the school, and that's possible. That could be where we are.
Yeah, if you listen to Nico, when he was asked when he signed on signing day, they said, why West Virginia? And he said, well, you don't necessarily sign with the coach. It's more about me wanting to go in and create a winner and to create a winning atmosphere. It wasn't anything positive necessarily about Neil Brown. It was kind of like, hey, I want to go and create something great.
I like that. I like that answer.
Yeah.
Plus, Morgantown's got the best looking women in the country as long as they keep their mouths shut.
No comment.
That's what's bringing in these guys. He's just telling them that we got some pretty girls in Motown. Now, my thing about Nico when coming in, I just hope when he gets there, he just doesn't. I hope he develops right and he doesn't get worse. I hope everything works out for him. He gets the right coach underneath him, and I hope this season coming up, man, just is we see more, I guess, authority from Neil Brown and and getting the right personnel. Like Sammy says, don't bring in your friends from Troy. You may have been good there, but it is a step up in Morgantown, and so it's a different ball game there. So I hope there's going to be a good quarterback battle with Green, Crowder, and Nico coming this season.
Oh, and ideally, that's what I would like to see, because they could go on and call it a career and let Green, Crowder, and Nico fight it out. And whoever comes out victorious is your starter, and that's just the way it is.
Yeah, I can't imagine Garrett Green's coming back next year. I can't imagine how he would feel about this year, and how his future at West Virginia just doesn't seem very bright.
True.
Well, and I think, in his mind, I think he maybe want to see what Jared Dagey does too. Because I mean,
yeah, but even if Jared Dagey leaves, he still is going to have to compete with Crowder and Marchio, and he's probably third going into next year.
Honestly,
even if Dagey,
you're right.
So I just don't think he has a bright future at West Virginia. I think he's a fantastic player, but I don't think West Virginia is the right fit for him.
And I agree with that. I think he's kind of showed that. I do think he has a problem too with reading defenses and running plays. I don't know what the issue is, but I think there is one.
But I tell you, when you go back to watch that, Nico's, what's his high school? Arizona Bobcats or something? I don't know.
Huskies,
yeah. When they played Bishop Gorman, man, what a game. What a freaking game, dude.
Yeah, it just showed you what a winner he is. He's a winner. He gets it done. He's the opposite of Jarrett Dagey.
No, exactly. No, you're right, because Dagey is not a leader whatsoever. He went out there, he went through the motions, if you want to call it motions. Nico is a natural born leader. And I think when he gets the opportunity, he's gonna win some of those guys over, and he's gonna turn some things around. I think some good things are gonna happen. I don't want to deem, and I was telling this after we lost you the first time, I don't want them, all the fans of Mountaineer Nation want to deem him as the new savior, because he doesn't need that kind of pressure. Just, I want the fans of West Virginia to understand, let's give this kid some time to develop, and let's see what Neil Brown does with this new recruiting class, because if I'm telling you, halfway through the season, if it's not panning out, he's automatically on the hot seat, or he may be automatically on the hot seat at the beginning of this year. Who knows?
Yeah, and I don't know how most Mountaineers fans feel about this, but I would be much more comfortable watching, Mountaineer West Virginia going 5-7 with Nico Marchio the whole season than 7-5 with Jarrett Dagey, because at least you're making progress. At least you're showing that there's something in the future to look forward to.
Yeah, I mean, putting your eggs in more than one basket, because that's what Neil's done, and that's why it's hard for fans to look past Jarrett Dagey, because that's where all of our hopes and dreams for the season was, and then we look at how it turned out, and it's like, how do you move on from that? I remember moving on from Pat White and Geno Smith, and how hard that was. I mean, this is an easy move on if they'll just do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, someone in the comments asked if I thought that 8-4 would be enough improvement. I think 8-4 would be great next year.
Sure.
Schedule looks challenging. I think it's going to be tough to get to 8-4 next year, regardless of who the quarterback is.
Yeah, opening game is Pitt, right?
Yeah, and then at Virginia Tech as well in September.
True.
Yeah, I'm thinking. I mean, I'm looking. I did a Sam's way too early prediction show a few weeks back, and I think I have it 7-5, and that's really optimistic. I mean, honestly, if we could get to 6-6 next year, without Jared Dagey, I would be thrilled. I would be over the moon with that.
Yeah, 6-6 with a young quarterback. I'll take it all day.
Yeah.
So we're not asking for the moon, guys. We got to see change. And that's what it's all come down to, is we want to see that Neil Brown can make hard decisions about personnel and coaching staff and do the right thing that's the best thing for the program. If he starts Nico and Nico wins 4 games, that's fine.
Mhm.
At least we're moving in a direction. But right now, if you want to take the trust the climb, buh, buh,
Trust the climb.
I mean, really, if you want to look at it and that description, we're on a plateau. Like there is no mountain to climb. Like we either find the next mountain to climb, or it's time for Neil Brown to go because we are on a plateau. We're not going anywhere.
Yeah, 7-5 with Jared Deggy again. That'd be a major decline. That would show no growth, and that's unacceptable.
Absolutely.
Dang right it is.
Well, Brad, thanks for coming on. This is Brad Smith with the Voice of Motown.
Yeah, Brad, thanks, man. Tell everybody who's listening right now where they can find you and whatever social media outlets you use.
VoiceofMotown.com, Voice of Motown on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. We're the largest on Facebook, largest West Virginia site, largest on Instagram, and we'll soon be the largest on Twitter. Like I said, man, we're the most honest place you're going to find real news on West Virginia sports. Tune in.
That's awesome. We appreciate you coming on, man. Like, it was a good conversation. I hope that the conversation reaches the ears of some of the fans that need to hear, that you're not out to destroy West Virginia football. You're out to improve West Virginia football, and we all want the same thing. Like, and that's what I want everybody to hear. Is it's not that Brad's being too hard on anybody. He's just telling you the truth, and that, to me, that's important. You may not always agree with the truth, but at least if you listen to it, it'll give you a different way of thinking and a different way of looking at what's going on in Morgantown.
Absolutely. That's exactly what we're trying to do.
We appreciate you coming on. I'm Sam the Man. This is
hey Sam.
Yeah.
Hey, go ahead before the outro. Go ahead and tell people who our next guest will be. I think what is today? Wednesday, Monday, right?
Dude, I don't have it written down.
I'm a
What's
tough
his
act.
name?
I'm a tough act to follow, guys.
No, you are. Is it Jed Wonderly?
Yeah, Jed Wonderly out of Utah, the Utes. He's got a kind of a younger channel, really nice. Found him when I made my Ohio State Utah prediction. We've been conversing ever since. We're going to bring him on and talk Utah, Ohio State after the Utes destroy the Buckeyes.
Oh, I hope not.
I do, because it won't be much to talk about if they don't.
If they do, if my Buckeyes lose, then I'm used to it. I'm used to it.
But anyway, guys, if you haven't already, hit that subscription button on YouTube, on Facebook. Be sure to share and give us a thumbs up. Brad, we appreciate coming on, man. Hopefully we can do this again in the future. Really enjoyed the conversation.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Let's go Mountaineers, guys.
All right, guys, for all of us here at the Mountaineer Effect, the 304 podcast, let's go Mountaineers. Everybody have a good night.